evening, everyone, and welcome to another exciting edition of Partner Picks, where perfection is a work in progress. I'm your host, Sam. Alongside me, as always, is the illustrious GM of the team. How you doing tonight, Tarek?
I'm doing okay. It was a weird week of football, but it was a good week of football, so I'm ready to talk about it with my peeps. Let's go. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing pretty good, And yes, you're right, there were a lot of upsets. Speaking of upsets, football Jesus is here to upset us all. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing a lot better now that I'm back. I just couldn't take the disrespect from the first week. I had to take a week off to really center myself and come back to this, my kingdom.
Did you watch last week's video? Because there was more disrespect.
Yeah, I watched last week's video.
That's good. And then, of course, we have the QB guru, Jessica. How are you this evening?
I am clearly hungry. And I'm like a hot mess tonight, okay? So
you're hungry for a win. That's what it is.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you over the beeps.
All right. Well, of course, Partner Picks is brought to you by Aardvarks Concept Incorporated. More than just a sign shop. Catch them up in Westminster for all of your sign and decal needs. And Into Deep. They are back, baby. And they've played 2 shows already. Their third show is coming up at the Waterfront Hotel Bar Friday, October 18th. Go ahead and catch them. 9:30 p.m. It's going to be a great show. All right. Speaking of a great show, Tarek has alluded to this already. It was an interesting week in football. A lot of upsets, a lot of huge upsets. Teams just getting absolutely rolled. But talking about teams getting rolled and people getting rolled, Tua, yet another concussion on IR right now. This is the third confirmed concussion in the last 3 years. Of course, we all know he probably had one more last year. Is it time for him to give up the ghost for his own safety, his own health? Let's throw it over to the GM.
So this is interesting. So when we're saying someone should retire and they're more than 10 years younger than me, and I'm not 40 yet, it makes me feel really old. On the other side, you have to look at your circumstances. All right. I am one of my teams I like is the Colts. We had Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck had to retire because he kept rupturing his spleen, puncturing lungs, concussions. He just kept getting hurt, and he took it. He's like, all right, you know what? I'm done. So if he keeps doing this, then he needs to make that decision for him. 26, I think, is too young for a quarterback to really go. But if he keeps getting hurt, then he's not. I don't want to make that decision for him. But we are a football show, so I'll say he needs to make that decision for himself. But it looks like it's probably more dangerous for him to stay than it is for him to go.
I'll be the contrarian, and I'll say no. Because the NFL has spent countless millions of dollars, not only in concussion research, but designing helmets and now the Guardian caps that are available to players to wear this year. Obviously, he needs to do what's best for his ultimate well-being, because no matter what happens, he's walking away from football with millions of dollars. It's just a matter of what condition he's in with those millions of dollars. But I think, just to be the contrarian, that he should take these 4 games off on the IR, practice with that Guardian cap, and learn how to protect himself better on the football field and not dive headfirst into guys, and learn how to properly slide as a quarterback, and see if he can really make a career out of this, because he is a talented player, but he's not talented at keeping himself safe.
I will say I agree with Tarek. He should retire. More so because even when he's taking hits that other guys are taking or that don't look egregiously worse than anyone else, he's more injured than they are. I don't know why that is, but it's definitely been happening. And things like the what do they call it? The Guardian cap or whatever. That's not going to protect him in all of those scenarios. Honestly, I don't know if it would have protected any of those scenarios. It's not very thick. So I think he needs to think of his health, and I do think he needs to call it quits, because he's clearly a little more injury prone and super injury prone.
I feel like he's had the multiple opportunities to learn how to protect himself by sliding, by doing the things that are going to prevent him from getting these injuries. Unfortunately, he still hasn't learned. He's diving headfirst into Damar Hamlin, who, by the way, collapsed 2 years ago on the field. And, of course, he just – the Guardian Caps themselves, I'm sure they help a little, but they can't help a lot. A concussion is when the brain is bouncing around in the skull. It's basically bruising itself inside of the skull.
I'm aware of that.
Yes.
I've had two.
I'm sure most of us have had at least one.
Don't choke, Brady.
Definitely know I've had at least one. But given what it is and the fact that you can't – the way he's falling, I mean, he's slamming into things. He's falling backwards. One of his concussions was him getting slammed backwards onto the turf. The Guardian helmet isn't going to help with that because his head stops immediately when that happens. So I feel like this is going to cause an issue for him later on in his life, but it is his life. Hopefully he can learn to mitigate these risks more better, at least. But as of right now, he hasn't. So if he feels like the risk is worth the reward, sure, stick with it.
Are we sure the injury with Damar Hamlin wasn't a defense protocol for Damar Hamlin, so he didn't pass out again? It was just a rebounding energy onto Tua?
I don't know. He shot at him like a missile. But, all right. Well, there you have it, folks. 3, kind of 4 retiring and 1 against, I guess. Not really keeping track here, but let's get on to what we are keeping track of, the standings. So, look, Jessica's over there trying to math. Let's take a look at our current standings. It was a rough week for most of us.
Yeah, it was a wild football week when week 1 and the 13s, 14s, 12s, whatever. Week 2, we were in the 6s and 7s. Like, that's insane.
Yeah.
I was so nervous. I was telling Brady, I was so nervous when I pulled up my record, the thing on Monday at work, and I'm like, oh no, this is so bad. And I looked, I'm like, oh, I actually did better than almost everyone else.
Yeah, and I almost changed one of my picks before our video last week, but I did not, and I kept it just the way it was. I was going to switch it to Arizona.
You don't win points for being stubborn.
Obviously. Obviously I don't, but I still got more points than you this week. So
this week.
Let's go ahead and move on to our games of the week. And football Jesus, you are upon the mountaintop.
I am, and 2 teams who are looking to get to that mountaintop this year, which I think are 2 of the more exciting teams at the start of the season. The Detroit Lions playing the Arizona Cardinals. So Detroit, both these teams are 1-1. I think Detroit was one of those teams where everyone expected them to be 2-0, to come out hot. They've got all the weapons. They've got the great offensive line. Their defense got reloaded in the back end. And then you have Arizona, who everyone knows what Kyler Murray can do, but they got Marvin Harrison Jr. But everyone else is kind of a question mark. But it's that defense of Arizona that's really kept them in the game. They're ranked 8th in the league so far. So I see this being an extremely interesting matchup, as Arizona's strength is going up against Detroit's strength in Detroit's offense against Arizona's defense. And I really think it's going to come down to whether Arizona can play at the same level of defense that they have for the past 2 weeks. With Detroit having guys like Jahmyr Gibbs, guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown, and the other wide receiver that I can't think of his name, the one that you just traded for, Sam.
Yes. I think it's Jerome Williams.
No, the wide receiver from Detroit.
Yes, I thought it was Jerome Williams. It is Williams. It's Jamison Williams.
Jamison Williams, thank you.
It's a Williams.
Someone who essentially his first year that he was healthy in the NFL ran exclusively go routes, but now this year they folded him more into that offense. So I see this being a very exciting game. I have Detroit in this one, but I think this is going to be a very close game within 3 points.
I agree with the point spread. I am kind of back and forth on who I'm going to go with here. It is in Arizona. I did pick Detroit, but there is a potential injury for Amon-Ra St. Brown. I heard they are playing it, like downplaying it, but as it gets closer, depending on the injury report, I could change it to Arizona. But because it's such a close game, I think within 3 points as well.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really. I'm pretty sure I'm double checking here who I've got. I'm pretty sure I've got Detroit as well. And it looks like, yes, I do. So I agree. I mean, there's nothing that can't be said. Both of these teams are kind of not where anyone expected them to be. They're both at 1-1. So this is just, I think this is actually going to be really close, but it should be, I give props to Brady. This should be a really good game to watch while both try to get ahead here. So I'm going with Detroit.
I look at this game, I see two things. Two of the better receivers in the league, well, two of the going to be better receivers in the league. Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be an absolute stud at some point, starting this season. Not the number one receiver overall, but you know what? Maybe in a couple of years, he'll be the number one receiver. I think this guy has a lot of talent, but he has a quarterback that isn't exactly up to snuff to get it to him as well as he should. Kyler Murray, he's a little man with a big complex. He loves his Call of Duties, and he doesn't like to – every time there's a new Call of Duty, he loses because he's playing his games. He's a self-admitted gamer. But – given the fact that Amon-Ra St. Brown is questionable this week, I think he's going to play. I just have a feeling that's the way it's going to go. I also have Detroit winning this one. It's going to be close. I actually have it coming more down to the run game, though. I got Jahmyr Gibbs as slightly better this week than James Conner. And I got that right this week. So, all right. Let's move on to our next game of the week, the GM. Who are we picking up this week?
We got the Saints and the Eagles. For anyone who doesn't know, that's how they say it. I'm Philly. So this is interesting. It was one of the ones since Jess took my other game.
Too slow.
So we got Derek Carr. It looks like still Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts under a lot of fire. He had a really tough loss against the Falcons last week. Isn't looking so great. Got the Saints, even though their wide receivers and getting me any points in fantasy, they're still doing okay. Not that I'm bitter or anything. But because of Jalen Hurts, because of that situation, I think both teams are going to be fired up, but I am going with New Orleans.
I am also going with New Orleans. Derek Carr was very much maligned when he first got to New Orleans last year. But this new offensive coordinator that they have down in New Orleans has found some spark with that entire team. Alvin Kamara, who's reaching that plateau for aging running backs, has seemingly found a resurgence in his career, much to my happiness for fantasy. And again, the Eagles, I don't know if they've lost the magic, I want to say, but last night, really, they didn't look like the team from the week before. The Falcons, in week one, couldn't move the ball. And then the Eagles gave them the ball with 50 seconds left, and the Falcons drove down the field like it was nothing. And I don't know. I don't know if it's because Jason Kelce is gone. I don't know if it's because Nick Sirianni is starting to feel the pressure of not being able to perform and repeat with his team again, given all the talent. But I'm going with New Orleans at home, essentially because it's just at home.
So because it's a new year, are you saying Falcons again?
No.
Last year you stopped saying Falcons.
It's a new year, so I can say Falcons.
Okay.
And they're going to be a competitive team this year, but I refuse to say the other team in their league that's blue and black and silver.
Ah, yes.
Like of a black feline variety.
Yeah, like a big puma.
It's not a puma.
So, I did pick the Eagles, and I'm kind of thinking I might stick with them. I do agree that there is some disjointedness. Is that a word? On the Eagles, but I also like the New Orleans Saints. They've looked amazing, but they've looked amazing against games that really didn't show up. So the first one was Carolina. The second one was Dallas, which I think is a great team. However, there are games that they just don't show up. And I mean, their defense to allow that many points, like I don't think that was just New Orleans being an outstanding team. Okay. Kamara is amazing. And Carr, I do think is a pretty good quarterback. But I might stick with my underdog here and take Philly. I might regret it though.
I'm not gonna lie. I don't think Philly should be the underdog, even with the Saints being absolute monsters that they are right now. Fun fact: the Saints have scored on every single drive that they've had so far this year, whether it be a touchdown or a field goal. That's nuts. They've scored 91 points. That's crazy, considering Derek Carr last year, he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn, and Alvin Kamara's legs were being held on with Band-Aids. Right now, Kamara and Barkley, these two running backs, are two of the better running backs in the league, both of them right around 200 yards rushing and quite a few touchdowns. Alvin Kamara getting most of his against the Cowboys, who seem to have gotten lost in the locker room at some point. But given what we have here, this is not going to be as close as people think it's going to be. I feel like that the Saints had their 2-week run where they're, oh my goodness, look at them go. They're having big numbers. They're putting up big numbers. But this week, I think the Eagles actually bounce back, have a huge game, and the Saints score around 20 points. The Eagles score around almost 40. Kind of a reversal against what happened to the Cowboys, even though I hate the Eagles.
So Sam's just saying that because he wants the team that beat up on his team to have that feeling against them.
Generally, no. I like the Eagles worse than I would ever want that. So, let's move on to our last game of the week. Jessica, what have we drawn up this week?
So this week I am watching or looking at the versus the Vikings. I believe it's in Minnesota.
Yes.
Anybody want to? Okay.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting matchup. These are two pretty strong offensive teams. I know the week one for the Minnesota Vikings was kind of dismissed against the Giants, and rightfully so dismissed. But week two they won against San Francisco, whereas on the flip side, Texans barely won against Chicago, which did not look good. I mean, that game was not enjoyable at all. What's his name? The rookie quarterback for just never seemed to get his rhythm. Whereas Sam Darnold's kind of,
Caleb Williams. Sorry.
Williams, that's right. Whereas Sam Darnold is shocking people. He's completing the majority of his passes. He's passing for over 200 yards per game. I think that that's going to take a bit of a hit, and I think that it's going to be kind of an offensive struggle between the two. CJ Stroud is a great quarterback. He's got great weapons at his disposal. It's going to be difficult for the Vikings to defend against for sure. I am going to go ahead and I don't know what I picked. I took the Texans. Ooh. I might be flipping that one. I'm not on the Darnold train, but I think it's hard for me to take the Texans after watching them struggle so much against, knowing what an offensive weapon Minnesota is going to be. So I'm probably going to flip that to Minnesota.
I agree with what Jess said. I have the Texans, but I'm watching the injury report on this one for the Vikings because of Justin Jefferson with his quad injury and then Jordan Addison with his ankle injury. So if neither of those guys can go, Minnesota really doesn't have that defender the player to take advantage of the Texans defenders. While the Texans offense, who we all, I think the entire world thought they have so many weapons, they're going to be world beaters, they're going to set records. How can they lose? And the best part of their offense has been their run game with Joe Mixon, who is potentially out for this game with an ankle injury. So we don't really know what the Texans are doing at this point, because I personally will say I think they should be putting up points like the New Orleans Saints have been. And they really haven't been. And their defense is okay. It's not great. I mean, Caleb Williams is Caleb Williams. He's got growing pains. But we saw in week 1 against Indy, against Anthony Richardson, who's essentially a rookie quarterback. He played 4 games last year. Come in, and he looked like there's nobody out there. So I'm looking at this game. Hey, Zordon.
Sorry about that.
No, I'm looking at this game from a multitude of reasons because I'm concerned about both teams here. So I'm going with the Texans, but I could pull a Jess and flip based on injury reports.
Pull a Jess. You better get out of here with that nonsense.
Nah, I'm pulling a Jess.
That was why, though. The injury report. I forgot about that. That's why.
So I have to get mad at my co-presenter here. He stole my thunder of everything I was going to say about the injury report. That was my thing on this. So I agree with everything my colleagues have said here. It is, depending on the injury report, depending on how this goes, Sam may get a text Sunday morning saying my pick is switched. Because right now I have the Texans. I'm going with the Texans. But if one of those two come back, then I'm probably going to switch.
I look at this game. I see Sam Darnold on one side, a guy who was with the Jets for so many years and just had nothing around him. Now he's got Justin Jefferson. He's got a nice running back, right, and decent running back in Aaron Jones, I guess. He's a bit on the downhill, but I look at the other side, and they just got offensive weapon after offensive weapon. They got Joe Mixon running the ball. They got Nico Collins. They got Tank Dell. They got Stephon Diggs. They have so many people to throw the ball to, and right now their tires are spinning in the mud. They're not going anywhere. They're not getting the yards. They're not getting the touchdowns that they usually get. Yeah, they had 2 really close wins. The first week, as Jessica alluded to, they had a close win against Chicago. That was week 2. Week 1, they had a close win against the Colts, a team that has not won a game yet, but has kept it close. Unfortunately for them, I feel like this is a week where the defense for Houston is what steps up and wins it for them. I got this one being a much lower scoring game than usual for these two. I'm thinking 23-20. So, all right, let's move on to our pop panel pick'ems, and let's take a look at what we got. There's not too many dissenting picks this week, except for, of course, Tennessee and Green Bay. I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is due to the quarterback situation in Green Bay.
Yeah, I mean, Malik Willis had, 15 pass attempts last week, so I'm expecting that game to kind of be a crapshoot because Will Levis in Tennessee has kind of turned himself into an internet meme each week, both with his game-ending interception where he fell to his knees and put his hands on his head like he was in a hostage situation, and then week 2 where he fell down and threw the ball backwards for a fumble and then got yelled at by his coach full of expletives. So it's kind of a pick your poison in that one.
I only picked Titans because they're aware of what Malik Willis can do.
Good point. Yeah. Didn't think of that.
All right, let's move on to the next set. And, of course, 2 people picking the Saints, 2 people picking the Philadelphia Eagles currently. And then, of course, we have the Chargers and the Pittsburgh Steelers, 2 people who believe in the Steelers this week. And they're 1 offensive touchdown.
I might switch that. I don't know what happened.
I can't. They are 2-0. They are atop of the division, but the way that offense works and how slow it works. I feel like I'm watching football from 40 years ago. I cannot see it.
I wouldn't say I'm on the bandwagon for the, but I'm definitely not. But I would say they know they do win games, and Najee Harris looking a lot better than he did, and their quarterback situation is kind of up a little bit, but I'm not sure why I picked them. So
Probably because of TJ Watt.
Now, I want to ask Tarek, what was your thinking picking that? Was it the discussion we had last week of the Justin Fields and over Russell Wilson?
No, in all honesty, if you want my full and honest opinion, it was
Yes.
probably that Yahoo had Steelers winning a little bit on the thing, and I was just going, and I picked that, and then I go through and look at certain games more closely, and I did not have. So one of our main viewers, my friend Dan out in Washington, is going to be mad. He's like, "Oh, you picked it, but now you're making excuses." But I did not pay attention to that particular pick.
if I look at the Chargers' offensive line, it's horrendous, then I will stay with Pittsburgh because yes, TJ Watt is very fun to watch, especially weak offensive lines.
You guys can be rest assured that I will keep my picks just the way they are.
He says that now until next week. He comes like, well, I changed 4 of my picks and they all missed.
Well, let's take a look at one of them.
That he didn't.
Let's take a look at one of them that I almost changed. I did not pick the Cowboys this week. I picked the Ravens to beat the Cowboys. And Jessica, of course, picking the Tua-less Miami Dolphins to win.
Again, that's right.
Yeah, there's a
shocked that
pancake
Sam
flip-flop
picked
in there.
I don't.
Go ahead.
I rush making my picks because we do early, and I just try to fit it in. I don't know what the heck. I don't know what that could be.
I'll ask you, Sam, because you're asking questions. Why did you pick the Ravens over your beloved Cowboys?
That's exactly what I was going to say. I'm like, you picked the 0-2 Ravens over your Dallas Cowboys. I am kind of shocked at that.
The 0-2 Ravens are not going to be 0-3. They're just not. The Ravens have enough talent to win this game, and Dallas's defense looked like Swiss cheese last week. I think it's going to be close. I got Baltimore winning it in Dallas.
I actually struggled to pick the Ravens there.
Same, but that fourth game on that slot here, San Francisco and LA, 3 top wide receivers not playing in that game. Game's going to be a snooze fest.
Yeah.
Debo, Puka, and Cooper.
Cooper, yeah.
Let's fly out and get a job, Brady.
All right.
All right. And then, of course, unanimous for the last panel.
Here's
Not
to hoping
surprised.
that second one's different.
I mean, you got to think Pacheco's out, so they're going to be using either a rookie or Kareem Hunt fresh off the bench. They signed him today to their practice squad. So if the Falcons just play cover 2, totally possible. But you got to go with the almost sure thing at that point.
Yeah.
The only game that I had to think about was Jacksonville versus Buffalo because I'm fully expecting Buffalo's wheels to come off because they don't have a bona fide number 1 receiver.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, it's going to happen, but it is not this day.
No, because Jacksonville hasn't won in almost a calendar year. So.
You can't just completely rely on Trevor Lawrence.
Talking about they made it to the playoffs last year.
It's been like 200 and some days, so it's almost been like 365 days since.
For most teams, it's been like that.
Yeah, I know, but it's also Jacksonville.
You know, it's been like 200 days since I wore a coat. It seems like
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's sound science.
Their last win was the wild card round of the playoffs.
It's a long time ago.
Okay.
I mean, tell me, was that not a long time ago?
No, but you're a standard statistician, like padding the stats to prove your point.
Hey, if Shannon Sharp can do it, I can do it too.
Yeah, but you're not paid what he's paid.
Hey, I could be. You never know. Roll the outro, Tarek.
Thank you guys so much for watching through all this bullcrap. We appreciate it. Please be sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment, let us know who's going to win, who you think is wrong, anything else you can think of. Brady points to Jess. And we will see you next time. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm Tarek.
Yes.
King Football Jesus.
And I am Sam, and you have a great football week.
Bye, guys.